It's a good bounce back win for us today. I thought we started the game with the right tone on the defensive end. And so that was that was by design.
Everyone thought she was a lock. When you have the biggest star in the history of women's basketball, a player who doesn't just break records but shatters them, a player who sells out arenas in minutes and has single-handedly revived interest in a struggling league, you put her on the Olympic team, right? It seems like the most obvious decision in the world. But in a move that shocked the entire sports world and sent shockwaves through the media, Caitlin Clark was left at home. The official story was simple. They wanted experience. They said she wasn't ready. They said the roster was too stacked with veterans who had paid their dues. But insiders are now whispering that this wasn't just a roster decision. This wasn't about basketball. Rumors are swirling that this snub came immediately after a heated behind-scenes clash involving Clark, the physical violence she was continuously facing on the court, and a WNBA commissioner who refused to step in. They tried to say it was about the system, but the truth looks a lot darker. Was Caitlin Clark actually removed as punishment for standing up to the league? To understand the gravity of the situation, we have to go back to the beginning of the season. The hype surrounding Caitlin Clark was unlike anything the WNBA had ever seen. She was coming off a collegiate career that had captivated the nation, and the expectation was that the WNBA would embrace this momentum. But from the moment she stepped onto the professional court, the vibe was different. It wasn't welcoming. It was hostile. And we aren't just talking about competitive fire. We are talking about a coordinated effort to physically beat her down. You could see it in the way opposing teams defended her. It wasn't just tight defense. It was excessive. It was picking her up full court 94 feet from the basket, hitting her on every screen, and knocking her to the floor after the whistle. The veterans made it clear reality is coming. But what they meant by reality looked a lot more like hazing. The first major red flag that something was wrong behind the scenes appeared during that infamous game against the Chicago Sky. By now, everyone has seen the clip. The ball wasn't even in play. The action had stopped. And yet, Kennedy Carter blindsided Clark with a hip check that sent her sprawling to the hardwood. It was a non-basket play. It was an attack. In any other league in the NBA, that's a suspension. That's an ejection. But in the WNBA, the referees called a common foul. They didn't even review it for flagrant until the league was embarrassed into upgrading it the next day. But watch the reaction of the players. Carter's teammate, Angel Ree, was seen cheering on the bench, celebrating the hit. This was the moment the world realized. The league isn't protecting their golden goose. They are letting the wolves eat her. This is where the commissioner Kathy Angelbert comes into the story. In a situation like this, the Rehab leader of the league is supposed to step in. When Michael Jordan was the face of the NBA, the league protected him. When Tiger Woods was the face of golf, the PGA protected him. But when fans and media pundits called on Angelbert to address the targeting of Clark, the response was deafening silence. It took days for her to even acknowledge the controversy, and when she finally did, it was a disaster. In an interview that will likely go down as one of the biggest PR blunders in sports history, Angelbert didn't condemn the violence. She didn't announce fines or suspensions. Instead, she compared the rivalry to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. She talked about how great the marketing was. She essentially told the world that the physical pounding Caitlin Clark was taking was good for business. This comment allegedly set off a firestorm behind closed doors. You have to imagine the frustration within Clark's camp. Here you have a rookie who is generating millions of dollars in revenue, securing charter flights for every team in the league, something the veterans had wanted for years. And the commissioner is treating her safety like a marketing gimmick. Rumors began to circulate that a meeting took place, or at least a very heated exchange of communications between Clark's representatives and the league office. The message was clear. Protect the player or there will be consequences. But in the WNBA, the old guard doesn't like being told what to do. The theory is that this demand for accountability was seen as arrogance. It was seen as the rookie trying to run the league, and that is when the narrative shifted from how do we use Caitlin to how do we humble Caitlin. The timing of the Olympic roster announcement is suspicious, to say the least. It dropped right in the middle of this turmoil. The selection committee, which operates in the shadows with very little transparency, announced the 12 names heading to Paris. Caitlin Clark was not on the list. The explanation given by the committee chair was filled with contradictions. They claimed they checked the boxes for experience and defensive prowess. They claimed they didn't want to disrupt the chemistry of the team. But let's look at the facts. Team USA has won gold at every Olympics since 1996. They are a juggernaut. They don't need 12 veterans to win. In the past, they have used the final roster spots to groom the next generation. They did it for Breanna Stewart when she was young. They did it for Diana Taurasi. Why change the philosophy now? Why exclude the one player who would bring millions of eyes to the screen? The answer brings us to the head coach of Team USA, Cheryl Reeve. If you look at Reeve's public behavior leading up to the selection, the snub stops looking like a basketball decision and starts looking like a personal grudge. Months before the team was picked, Reeve was active on social media, sending out cryptic tweets that many interpreted as shots at Clark's fanbase. When the preseason game between the Minnesota Lynx and the Indiana Fever happened, Reeve seemed visibly annoyed by the questions about Clark. She famously said, "We don't give a damn," when asked about the attention the rookie was bringing. This is the woman in charge of the roster. It is hard to believe that her personal distaste for the Caitlin Clark mania didn't influence the decision. It felt like she wanted to prove a point. This is our league. This is our team. And you haven't earned it yet. But the decision to leave her off wasn't just about the coach. It was about the locker room. The chemistry excuse was likely code for jealousy. Imagine the scenario. You have Diana Taurasi, Brittany Gurrier, Breanna Stewart, legends of the game who have been playing for a decade. They are used to being the stars. If you bring Caitlin Clark to Paris, nobody is interviewing Diana Taurasi. Every camera, every microphone, every fan is there for the rookie. The veterans knew this. There is a strong belief that the older players didn't want the circus. They didn't want to share the spotlight with a 22-year-old who they felt hadn't paid her dues in the WNBA yet. So, the committee chose the path of least resistance. They chose to protect the egos of the veterans rather than grow the game globally. The backlash was instant and massive. It wasn't just sports fans. It was the general public. People who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives were suddenly furious. Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, and every major sports analyst called it a stupid decision. They called it malpractice. They pointed out that the Olympics is a marketing event as much as a sporting event. The Dream Team in 1992 wasn't just about winning. It was about selling basketball to the world. Leaving Clark home was like leaving Michael Jordan home because you wanted to play team ball. It defied logic. And yet, the WNBA and USA Basketball dug their heels in. They refused to admit they made a mistake. They doubled down on the experience narrative even as Clark started breaking record after record in the regular season. This brings us back to the clash with the commissioner. If the rumors are true, and Clark's camp did confront the league about the violence and the lack of protection, the Olympic snub serves as the ultimate punishment. It sends a message to every player in the league. We control your legacy. By denying her a gold medal, they denied her a line on her resume that she can never get back. It was a power move. It was the establishment reminding the disruptor who is really in charge. But if they thought this would silence her or break her spirit, they were dead wrong. In fact, it might have been the best thing that could have happened to her. While Team USA was in Paris, playing in front of empty arenas during the group stages, Caitlin Clark was doing something she hadn't done in years. She was resting. She took a month off. She went on vacation. She got away from the toxicity of the league, the hard fouls, and the constant media scrutiny. And when she came back, she was a different animal. The Olympic snub version of Caitlin Clark was lethal. She started dropping triple-doubles. She broke the rookie assist record. She broke the single-season assist record. She led the Indiana Fever to the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade. The league tried to humble her, and instead they recharged her battery. Meanwhile, the narrative around Team USA became awkward. Yes, they won the gold. They barely beat France in the final by 1 point. It was a nail-biter. And all anyone could talk about was what if Caitlin was there. The ratings for the Olympics were okay, but they weren't historic. They left millions of dollars on the table. Think about the jersey sales. Think about the global viewership. NBC must have been furious. They paid billions for the rights to broadcast the Olympics. And the biggest draw in American sports was sitting on a couch in Indiana. It was a billion-dollar mistake fueled by pettiness. The irony of the situation is palpable. The WNBA players have spent years complaining about the pay gap, about the lack of respect, about the need for better travel conditions. Then a player arrives who fixes all of that. Caitlin Clark is the reason they have charter flights now. She is the reason TV contracts are being renegotiated for massive sums. She is the rising tide lifting all boats. And instead of handing her a surfboard, they try to drown her. The commissioner's failure to protect her from physical harm, and the committee's failure to put her on the global stage highlights a deep insecurity within the league. They want the money she brings, but they don't want the change she represents. Let's dig deeper into the specific violence that triggered this whole saga. It wasn't just Kennedy Carter. It was the game against the New York Liberty, where she was blitzed by 2 defenders every time she touched the ball, getting knocked to the floor repeatedly with no whistle. It was the constant chirping and face guarding. In one instance, a player literally took a swing at her head while going for the ball. The referees often turned a blind eye. This is where the conspiracy theory gains weight. If the league wanted her to succeed, the refs would be protecting her. The fact that they weren't suggests a directive from the top: let them play. But letting them play when one player is the target of 11 other teams isn't fairness. It's negligence. The clash with Commissioner Engelbert likely revolved around this specific double standard. Why is Angel Reese allowed to taunt and celebrate hard fouls without repercussions? Why are coaches allowed to publicly diminish Clark's achievements without a fine? When Clark's camp allegedly demanded answers, they were met with corporate speak. Engelbert's background is in business at Diot. She looks at numbers. She likely calculated that the controversy was driving engagement. Hate watching is still watching. If people are tuning in to see if Caitlin gets knocked down, they're still tuning in. It is a cynical, cold-hearted approach to managing a human being's career, but it fits the pattern of behavior we've seen all season. And what about the players who stayed silent? There is a code of silence in the WNBA. Very few veterans stood up for Clark. In fact, many joined in on the criticism. They talked about her turnover rate. They talked about her defense. They picked apart her game in a way they never do for other rookies. It was a coordinated effort to gaslight the public into thinking she wasn't that good. She's just a shooter. They said she can't handle the physicality. The Olympic snub was the culmination of this campaign. It was the official stamp of approval on the she's overrated narrative. But the stats don't lie. You don't lead the league in assists and points generated if you are overrated. The numbers expose their bias. We also have to talk about the racial element that the media keeps dancing around but plays a huge role in the tension. The discourse surrounding Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese became a proxy war for culture. The league found itself in the middle of a toxic debate. By removing Clark from Team USA, the committee might have thought they were de-escalating the situation. If we leave her home, the noise stops, but that is cowardly leadership. You don't make basketball decisions based on Twitter trolls. You put the best 12 players on the floor. By trying to avoid controversy, they created the biggest controversy in the history of women's sports. The repercussions of this decision are going to be felt for years. The relationship between the Indiana Fever and the league office is reportedly fractured. Trust has been broken. Caitlin Clark is a professional. She says the right things in press conferences. She says she's happy for the team and will work harder for 4 years from now. But you can see it in her eyes. She knows what happened. She knows she was robbed. And that chip on her shoulder is going to drive her to destroy the league for the next decade. The veterans who wanted to teach her a lesson have created a monster. They wanted to humble her, but instead they motivated her to take everything from them. Looking ahead to 2028, the Los Angeles Olympics, Caitlin Clark will be in her prime. The veterans who blocked her this year, Teracey Bird, who is retired but influential, the older guard, will be gone. It will be Clark's team. But will she even want to play for them? After the way she was treated, After the lack of protection, after the public embarrassment of the snub, would anyone blame her if she told USA Basketball to kick rocks? The bridge has been burned. It will take a lot of apologizing and a lot of structural change to rebuild that trust. The commissioner needs to realize that the players are the product, not the system. You cannot treat your generational talent like a nuisance and expect loyalty in return. And let's not forget the fans. The fans saw through the lies. They saw the experience excuse for what it was. The comment sections, the forums, the YouTube videos. The sentiment is overwhelmingly on Clark's side. The WNBA had a chance to unite the old fans and the new fans under the banner of Team USA. Instead, they drew a line in the sand. They told the new fans, "Your favorite player isn't welcome here." That is a dangerous game to play when you're trying to grow a business. You don't alienate your customers to satisfy your employees. The backlash against Cheryl Reeve has been particularly harsh. The calls for her firing have been constant. Whether or not she keeps her job remains to be seen, but her legacy is now forever tied to this decision. She will always be the coach who left Caitlin Clark at home. The financial aspect is the final nail in the coffin of the